So today I have Andy Sherman with Apex Growth Advisors with us today, and he has a great story to tell us about Enron. Thanks for coming on, Andy.
Glad to be here, Jason.
So
Yeah,
what was your story about Enron and regarding the sales and them reaching out to you? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah, sure. I got involved in a little bit of a different side of Enron. I think everybody knows about them and all the stuff they were doing illegally with energy.
Right.
But back around 2002, and that whole dot com phase, I was working for a dot com startup. We were basically a data center, a hosting company, and we relied heavily on having enough bandwidth, internet bandwidth, coming in and coming out of our data center to support our customers. And these guys that we'd never heard of, who weren't in the bandwidth or the internet backbone business, came to my company and made a pitch for how they were creating a market for internet bandwidth. And none of this made sense in terms of the way our business operated. It just was totally illogical. We needed a big pipe coming in and a pipe going out to be able to drive the internet traffic in and out of our data center. And they were talking about creating some market that was basically in the cloud, but we were going to be able to buy into this market and pay below typical rates and somehow get bandwidth. Like I say, it actually made no sense whatsoever. But we had a few people in the company who got sucked into this thing and thought it sounded like a great idea. We never did it. Fortunately, calmer heads, wiser heads ruled, and especially our CFO said, "No freaking way." But that was my first exposure to Enron, and that was just a year or two before their whole world blew up and
Oh,
they got
so
taken to the cleaner.
yeah, that's an incredible story. Definitely hearing from the consumer side and just people that were being taken advantage of. But Andy, that's not your day job. Can you tell us a little bit about the Apex group that you essentially created, and kind of what you do and when people should be contacting you and emailing you when they need you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks again, Jason. So I came up the ranks and through the ranks of corporate sales leadership, big companies like IBM and Apple, and then startups like the one I just described. And I ended up turning companies around and basically getting their
Wow.
sales functioning so that we could take those companies and get an exit, sell the companies was really the ultimate goal. And I liked doing that so much, and I found myself doing it repeatedly. And I ended up deciding to basically step out of the corporate world and do this as a consulting kind of a business. But I'm not a consultant in the terms of doing an analysis and coming back with a 200-page binder. I'm a hands-on guy, so I work with companies whose sales are stuck, typically small, medium-sized companies,
Great.
and I work with them to basically look at their sales strategy, their story, sales story as I call it, sales process, and most importantly, salespeople. And I work as a fractional VP of sales or a sales leader. I go into the organization and I help improve all of those aspects of their business so that they can hit record sales. For many of these companies, as I said, small, maybe owner or founder led, we are trying to position for an exit. And so I help them with their sales functions, get their revenues up, and ultimately increase their valuation.
I mean, I hear so many people who have had such a wonderful experience with you, and a lot of people that really need your help at this point where it's a brand new world, right? I mean, the sales, the way that the strategies of contacting people and just the way that their business is going to be in the next year or two, it's all about whether they can transition or if they can kind of convert those into real sales numbers. And that's why they really need you at this moment.
Yeah, you're right. This is it's an inflection point for sales. We were headed towards more and more virtual selling, and for a lot of reasons. But with the pandemic, it was a non-choice. Everybody had to be virtual.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, and this is coming out of studies like folks like McKinsey, everybody's virtual today or has been during the pandemic, but most companies are saying they're not going back to the old model.
Oh,
So
wow.
this has truly been transformational in terms of sales, with 75+% of companies surveyed saying they're not even going to try to go back to the old model. They found tremendous value in virtual sales, the efficiencies, the costs, and in a lot of cases, companies have changed their model. They've increased their services, their level of service, customer service, and they've really benefited, as have their customers. So yeah, it's been a true inflection point.
Well, Andy, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you have to go to your next meeting. I would love for you to come back on next time to talk about all the kind of the difficulties that certain industries have with all the compliance issues and how do they make sales with all those compliance issues around. But I do know you have to get going. But thank you for coming on today.
All right. Well, thank you, Jason.